His computer.
Hello, I'm Jeff Kramer, the author of Infinite Resources, and I'm here with Roger Carlson, the author of the Saving the World Before Breakfast series of books. And today we're
Hello.
going to be talking about who
Mm-hmm.
killed the electric car. Now, most of you are probably aware that there was a documentary, I think, in the 1990s, talking about exactly that topic, where General Motors had come out with an electric car, in essence, to meet California pollution regulations, and they had a mandate to require a certain number of electric vehicles on the road. And GM produced a decent model called the EV1. And people who, the interesting thing was that GM did not sell the cars, they only leased them. And the people who they leased them to were quite fond of them. And then when another government came in California, they basically quashed all those requirements, and GM said, "Great, we're not going to do this anymore." And they took all of those vehicles and basically went and destroyed them all, even though the people who owned them and operated them still wanted to keep them. So that was the idea behind the
Mm-hmm.
first the documentary, and so there's a conspiracy, of course. Who was responsible for doing all of that? Was
Mm-hmm.
it the oil and gas industry? Was it people within the automotive industry who didn't like that direction? Because as it turns out, it's fairly widespread knowledge that electric vehicles are far easier to maintain, so they don't have as many moving parts in their engines. The fuel is non-polluting. It's electric. Well, depending on what the source is, of course, of your
Mm-hmm.
electricity. And they have a whole bunch of benefits, but there's a lot of special interest groups that would prefer not to see the electric car take over. Anyway, so here we are, Roger, and why don't you jump in and discuss where we're going with that?
Okay, be glad to. And nobody knows the future on it because this is, yeah, who killed chapter two or book two, or who's trying to kill the electric car. And we can go through the various suspects and how they might be doing things. Of course, uh, we could start with Elon Musk, who's been on both sides of the issue because he actually said, hey, these lithium batteries have more power. Going back most of a century, Thomas Alva Edison wanted to have an electric car, and it just didn't have the power. In fact, one of the people that worked for him, Henry Ford, was doing things, and Ford sent an apologetic letter, said, Mr. Edison, I'd like to work on electric cars with General Electric, but it's it just doesn't have the power. So I'm going to the internal combustion engine, and they went on the way there. Well, then fast forward back to the late 1990s. These lithium batteries were a major improvement over the lead acid batteries that have been the major electric battery for vehicles since probably 1920s or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And so he was going along. He also had a solar photovoltaic thing. So he was the hero of alternate energies, new green things. And it was going from his solar panels from his company there to the electric car.
So
Starting with the
you're talking about Elon Musk here, not Edison at this point, right?
yes, yes, the new guy. Well, he's like Edison Part Two,
Hmm.
and some would argue as eccentric or even more eccentric than the
Quite
first Edison.
possibly.
So Elon Musk, uh, South African Jewish origin, Now American
Don't
has
forget
censored.
Canadian. He studied in Canada. His mom's from Canada.
Ah, okay, Canadian American.
Yeah, so
Hey,
his trip was his journey was basically from South Africa, and then he came to Canada, studied at Waterloo engineering, and then
uh-huh.
from there was able to go into the States and get a master's in engineering. So
Okay, that's the nice thing about the Canada and the United States, where people could go back and forth, and like Walter Irwin Thompson, a historian, talking about on the edge of history, and just like Greece did a lot of things, or at least a lot of the inventions from what's now the Middle East now, stayed alive in Greece because these great empires fought back and forth and Sumeria and whatnot, whereas still the ideas were still there. And we
mm,
hear about Pythagoras, but maybe he just repeated things in other places. But again, it's nice to be on the edge. And sometimes people on the edge think some new things. Anyway, so yeah, from South Africa, Canada, back to the United States, the new exotic, that one of the great prophets of alternate energies. There he was uh, doing these alternate energy things. However, for some personal reasons, he got angry with a lot of the left wing woke ideology that was going on, especially in the Democrat Party. And uh,
well,
I
can
could
I
go
can I
into it.
talk
I
to
think
that for
it
a
was
moment?
like one of his children was convinced to be that he was a girl instead of a boy,
Yeah.
and they did things, and Trump was, pardon me, Musk was furious about that, so he threw in with Donald Trump. Well, suddenly Musk is unpopular with people on the left who are his biggest supporters. So they not
Right.
only don't want to buy from him, if they get back into power, they are going to sabotage the Musk's automobiles.
Well, can
And
I
this
just
is one of the major cars that's doing well.
right?
So,
So Musk was a huge supporter and obviously innovator in the electric car story. Um, but I think it was the reason that he switched. Like he had a pretty good relationship with President Obama, as far as I can tell. The
oh,
Obama
heck yes.
administration basically saved Tesla by giving government grants for electric vehicles. They
Mhm.
helped with SpaceX and getting NASA contracts and all that sort of stuff. So he had a pretty decent relationship with the Republicans. What happened, or sorry, with
You
the
meant with the
Democrats?
Democrats, yeah.
Yeah, what happened was in the early days of the Biden administration, obviously there's a lot of Democrats that are very resentful about super wealthy people, and
Mhm.
also the trade unions that were working with GM, Ford, and Chrysler or Stellantis.
Mhm.
The president was having a an electric car. I don't know what you want to call it, a meeting of all the electric car manufacturers, and the union said, by the way, we don't want to have Elon Musk here. And so Musk wasn't invited. And of course, it doesn't make any sense that he wouldn't be invited because, Tesla was selling far more electric vehicles than anyone else. Well, obviously, that really kind of pissed him off. And
Mhm.
after that, again, the people in the back operations of the Democratic Party, I would say, and in the forefront too. I don't know that Biden was personally had a lot of animosity towards him, but I think that Kamala Harris did, and others in the Democrats. And so, the Tesla company, or the companies owned by Elon Musk, had many different lawsuits that were going on that were brought on by the government. And I think
Mhm.
when he, after Donald Trump was shot, and he came out and he's like, fight, fight, fight. Musk was kind of like, okay, I think I can work with this guy. And as it turns out, all of those lawsuits and stuff disappeared after Donald Trump was elected.
What a
And
coincidence.
what a coincidence. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
By the way, a whole bunch of other lawsuits that were going on against other companies that invested in Donald Trump's inauguration party also somehow or another got quashed by the DOJ. So
Well,
anyway,
another coincidence.
it's strange how that works. Yeah. Anyway, so there's a very good economic reason for Musk to support Trump, and again, this is one of the cases of the Democrats. I'm a Canadian, so I get to. I think I'm. If I was in the States, I'd probably be a Democrat. That's how my politics are. I'm one of those pinko
Mhm.
commie kind of guys that the
Mhm.
Americans like to talk about up here. But and I'm not, just for the record, I'm more of a centrist than a socialist. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that um, the Democrats essentially alienated Musk, who used to consider himself to be kind of left leaning, and
Mhm.
the whole fact that he was getting into electric cars and saw these things, and supporting, of course, green energy and renewable energy. Those are all. I don't think that they should be left or right, but as it turns out in American politics, the environment seems to be more of a cause of the Democrats as opposed to the
Mhm.
Republicans. So anyway, that's where he was, and that's the where I see things have moved as an outsider looking in. I've also read Musk's biography by Walter Isaacson. It's quite interesting. And so anyway, I didn't mean to
Mhm.
cut you off, but I just wanted to get that in there because there's a lot of going on behind the scenes
Mhm.
um, that should be brought up, I think.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think those are good points. And of course, I'd add some more on that. SpaceX at the beginning, this is electric cars and SpaceX, the space things. Obviously, not the electric rocket at this stage, but SpaceX originally got a lot of government things when it was like these are these crazy guys that want to totally rewrite rocketry with reusable rockets and they haven't built things before and they keep blowing up on the pad, which in fairness, everybody's rockets blew up on the pad at first. But anyway, eventually SpaceX got to be really good. Meanwhile, we were competing against Boeing and and several other uh, uh, well-established uh, defense contractors. And like Boeing was going to do it, and well, oh, not ready. It'll be another year, and Boeing still kept the contract. And Musk was getting angrier and angrier. It's like, hey, I've got the stuff that actually works. It already works right now. Why are you helping these guys? Well, of course they're helping them because it's an incestuous relationship. It's a revolving door between the defense contractors and governments. They go back and forth, and like the general was working on the space things for the Air Force, becomes a vice president in Boeing or Lockheed, so
mhm.
on, and and so that was another thing that would irritate Musk, who was not known to be kind of like Trump. Maybe that's why they got along for a while because uh, Musk would pop off like, "Hey, these guys aren't doing as well," and the government people don't like to be called out for doing things. And so
Well, I mean,
that was
I
another
mean,
reason where the things got into be an argument.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that a few weeks after, Trump is having a sales meeting for Tesla on the office front lawn. Then all of a sudden, Musk is like, "Well, I've completed my mission with Doge." And by the way, it looks like it was he doesn't say this that way, but it looks like it was all a waste of time because, we saved a few $100 million, but now we're going to go into further debt by trillions of dollars with this big,
Mhm.
beautiful bill. And yeah, so
Yeah,
obviously,
it was 9 billion, but point well taken. It's still pocket change compared with the trillions. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, anyway, I can understand the frustration, and especially since Musk was taking a lot of heat for the stuff that he was doing, and I think rightly so. So he's cutting off foreign aid to other
Mhm.
countries, and programs that I think were really making a difference in people's lives. He's cutting off social services, cutting off atmospheric research. All of these sort of
Mhm.
programs, and then also having access to everybody's personal information, very controversial. And of course he wasn't an elected official, so that
Mhm.
just it goes counter to a lot of the safeguards that democracy normally has built
Mhm.
into their systems. So
Yeah. But the point is, he was big time with Trump for a while, and that burned a lot of bridges with the left. I mean, they're basically Bolsheviks who never forgive. They will get even. They will. They say, uh, was it Mencken, the sage of whatever city it was? They still make nasty remarks about Mencken, who's been dead for 70 years or something like
right,
that. They're still angry about that. And so if they get back in, they are going to want to have, and right now, people have been burning Teslas, they key Teslas.
right,
They say, I'll never buy a Tesla again. And of course, when they get in, bank credit and things are cut off for their enemies. That was hell. Trump's family couldn't get uh, 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 bank accounts for a while. That was
I don't know the detail,
war
but
and politics are very much the same for the Democrats.
it sounds pretty nasty. So I mean the interesting thing that might come out of this is that Musk of course has threatened to start another national party in the United States, sort of a
Hmm.
centrist party, because I mean again looking at this as an outsider, things on both
Hmm.
sides. There's only two options realistically in the United States as who to vote for, and it's like extreme left in some respects and extreme right in other respects. And I think a centrist party would do quite well there. So,
Yeah. I know a friend of mine was at one time, I think it was the 2016 election, and this is in California, on the more west side, where most of the neighbors are all very uh, liberal and so on. And they said, "Who are you for? You aren't for Trump?" And he said, "Yeah, but either Trump or Sanders, either one of those two, because they're against fat cats that are running things now."
right.
And a lot of people can't understand that, but it's true. You're mad at the way things are, and if when Trump sort of backs off and yeah, take the little uh, slip back and compromise and log roll, all the cliche terms for it that got Musk angry. Well, yeah, he might go back. Uh, Sanders was already on the other side, so he's got it. But anyway, comes back to the electric car. Musk, by now, one of the major electric car companies in the United States that's actually working, has made enemies with both the Democrats and the Trump Republicans.
Yeah.
So uh, that's one thing that would hurt that continuing on with the electric car. The Republicans would tolerate him. The Democrats would try to arrest him, judging by how they dealt with Trump. So in any event, they're trying to destroy the company just like they were working to destroy the coal industry. So that's by design or just not getting along, Musk can be one major one major suspect for if the electric car gets killed off a second time. But that's just one suspect. Oh, you just went quiet. You're muted.
Sorry about that.
Mhm.
I clicked on a couple of buttons by mistake.
That
There's a
happens.
few points that I'd like to make. First of all, Tesla is far more than just an electric car company. So obviously they
Mhm.
are involved with solar panels. They're involved with battery packs for homes. They're involved now with artificial intelligence. They're involved with
Mhm.
um, robots. And
Yeah.
so, quite frankly, I mean, I think Elon Musk has got enough money that even if the electric car aspect of his business completely falls on its face, if he starts making personal robots that are successful, it's not even going to matter because he'll have an entirely new industry, and that'll just
Mhm.
take off from there. Especially, he's got Grok with the artificial intelligence on the platform formerly known as Twitter X,
Yes.
and anyway, so I think that people who really are interested in electric vehicles, if he can do the full self-driving and make it reliable so that he's not getting sued like that recent lawsuit in Florida where they were given punitive damages and the couple of, I think like $250 million of um, punitive damage. If we can get to the point where Waymo and all these companies are able to make the case that, hey, even with the occasional screw up, these things are far safer than letting people drive, then we're further ahead. Then the other thing I wanted to bring into this is we haven't talked about any of the other companies except in passing. And
Mhm.
I think what's going on in China is of great interest. So let's take this
Okay,
back
so
a
we go to
few
the
years.
Chinese suspect then,
Well, so
or
every
suspects.
manufacturer, I guess every manufacturer, I can make a blanket statement here. Every auto manufacturer sees the writing on the wall and expects that we're going to go electric sometime in the future. And there's also legislation in many countries that a certain percentage of vehicles need to be electric by a certain date. And this kind of goes back to that GM story that we
Mhm.
started out with. Uh, but really, the Europeans aren't making any electric cars that I'm aware of. So BMW,
Mhm.
Mercedes, and stuff that are groundbreaking. And the other North American manufacturers, likewise, Ford, GM, and Stellantis, they all have issues. But the ones that have really taken off, and I think a large part of this is because, the typical Chinese story in terms of manufacturing is like they invite Tesla in, then they steal their technology and improve on it. And so,
Mhm.
companies like BYD and many other Chinese manufacturers have greatly benefited by
Mhm.
Tesla opening up a mega factory in China. But they have then taken that technology, like I said, in a large extent, improved on it. So they're making batteries less expensive. They're able to, if I understand it correctly, you could buy a brand new Chinese, if there were no tariffs, you could buy a brand new top-notch Chinese electric vehicle. I'm not talking like luxury, but a commuter vehicle for about 10,000 US. And there's no manufacturers in the world that can touch that. So what does the United States and Canada and Europe do in response? Well, let's put tariffs on this because our companies can't
Mhm.
compete. We want to have a competitive. We want to be in the game. So in that 20,000 or sorry, $10,000 car that you could buy is now 20,000
Mhm.
because they're charging 100% tariff on that. And this was done in the age of Biden, not under Trump. So that's before all
Mhm.
of Trump's extra tariffs on top of it. But this is also done in Canada and also done in Europe. So the question is, if the Europeans and the Canadians,
Mhm.
are not just virtue signaling by bringing in all these laws that say you can't have polluting vehicles, or we're going to stop producing gasoline-powered vehicles by 2035, and we're going to require X number of electric vehicles by a certain date. If they're realistic about that and they really want to see the transition happen, you would think that they wouldn't care who is manufacturing the vehicles and go for the most ecologically sound practice. Now, there's
Mhm.
a whole lot to unpack in that, and I'll just start by saying one thing,
Yeah.
and I'll let you come in and say we don't have enough power generating capacity to go fully electric anytime soon. There's a
And that's
huge,
another suspect.
yeah. So I'll let you run with that, and I don't want to be dominating the conversation here. So,
Okay, yeah. Actually, you ran uh, across part of the gamut for a bunch of other suspects. There's one is the Western countries, United States, Canada, and Europe, who might not want another country dominating the industry. Uh, Number two, the power industry in these Western countries saying, look, you guys, you wonderful environmentalists, you got a great idea, but we can't increase the power, the electrical generation capacity to support these cars. It's not going to work. And of course, another one is back at China. They have other issues which might go on. And since China is its own issue with right now, it's been compared with the 1920s. The United States had a couple hundred car manufacturers, and there
mhm.
was a great, pardon the expression, bloodbath. This is economic things where a number was strictly like uh, in the financial world, a number of companies are going out of business. It's happened in China, BYD being one of the, or probably the most advanced, the biggest company with the best possibilities. But all these companies falling apart, it it's sucking their profits down. It's hurting BYD, and they've closed a few things. Like, how much do they have oomph behind them to keep going? And even China itself might be about to go into their version of the Great Depression.
Mhm.
We don't know quite what will happen there because they've had this real estate collapse
Yeah,
at a huge level.
yeah.
So
Well,
that, and then, as you said, as far as tariffs and things, Biden increased them some. Trump has increased them more and done them in Trumpian fashion. It's going to be big. It'll be the biggest thing. It'll be the worst thing if it doesn't happen. And so that hurts in its own way. So even if BYD is the best thing since sliced bread, if there's a major uh, economic depression in China, would that cause BYD to stumble? And then without BYD, yeah, what are you going to have? Uh, yeah, Ford and these companies trying to do things. So that I think that's a major suspect right there. And then you can go even further. The Chinese do really want, pardon me, I got to differentiate. The mainland Chinese, that is the communists, have never given up on getting that last province that the Kuomintang, the nationalists managed to hold on to with a little help from their friends in the U.S. Navy.
mhm.
So we keep getting these reports. Gordon Chang is an expert that talks about these things in particular. They are preparing to have a major invasion. They've built up their navy, and so it's not going to sell electric cars really well if you're involved in a major war. And by the way, to make your invasion successful, you have to hit places like Guam and Okinawa,
Mhm.
and where there's a lot of U.S. Marines and Air Force and Navy personnel things. Probably the Philippines as well, because
Well,
Subic Bay has been opening up again lately after they were
sure.
unceremoniously booted out about 30 years ago.
Let's take a step back there. So going back to Nixon and the negotiation. So the United States recognizes Taiwan as Chinese territory, and that's why the UN does not recognize Taiwan as its own separate country.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so, even though they recognize Taiwan as part of China, being part of China, they refuse to allow China to take it over by military force. And so they have promised that they would back Taiwan up militarily. And
Hmm.
Japan has echoed that, and I think the Philippines and some other countries in the area, like you mentioned.
Hmm.
So, if China does choose to take it to the military option, then these other countries are brought into it. But it is by the essentially the United States and these other countries are interfering from the Chinese perspective in an internal matter of their country. Just
Hmm.
for clarity, and I'm not saying that's a bad policy on the part of the United States. Obviously, we if you like freedom and you support democracies, and you're going to want to support that. But at the same time, under, as I
Hmm.
mentioned, with the Nixon administration and all of that, that recognition of Taiwan as being part of China goes way back. So,
That's well, there are a lot of things going on, and yeah, sorry, it's China and Taiwan have, have been international since, as you mentioned, the Nixon and Kissinger,
mhm,
because butting up to China pulled mainland China to CCP, uh, pulled mainland China away from possible alliance with the Soviet Union, which
right,
was the existential threat at the time. Well,
yeah,
since then, the existential threat uh, splintered into a number of pieces with Russia, and Ukraine is a separate country. And
mhm,
in trying to get Ukraine back, Russia, the Russian economy has just been devastated. The uh, whereas the Putin has been wanting to terrify the Ukrainians by blasting cities, the Ukrainians, in a more disciplined way, have been hitting refineries and radar stations and drone factories. They've gotten, they've hit so many things. And so there is a great possibility that the Russians will fail in their attempt. They're like, they had, when the special operations started, a lot of the soldiers packed their dress uniforms so they could be in the victory parade a week later in Kiev. Well, that didn't
hmm,
work out for them. So
yeah, exactly.
it's so the United States doesn't need China anymore, and China has said that you know we're we are the Middle Kingdom. Everything revolves about us. We're eventually going to take over the world. Oh, really? That was sort of
Well,
the situation with Germany and Britain in the late 1800s, and
yeah,
the United States being in the position of Britain. So at some point, the United States would want to trip the mainland Chinese government, and they're doing a great job themselves making enemies in India, Vietnam, where they invaded in 1979,
mhm,
and going further back in history, China conquered Vietnam, and just as Spain, there was a 900-year war, Reconquista, as the Spanish called it. I don't know what the Vietnamese word was. They fought 900 years to get the uh, Jade Throne armies and navies back out. And in fact, even after the Mongols took over, they were also invading Vietnam,
yeah,
and the wars continue at the in the South China Sea, where they have that marking line. In fact, there was one of the I forget, it was the uh, Indiana Jones movie, I think, where there was a map that got in there that didn't have China's uh, location in the world right. South China Sea. It's like, no, you got to change that. so so that is another thing that might cause a problem. So Trump in particular has uh, been wanting to push back against industry being in China. And so BYD is possibly the new Ford Motor Company is something that he would want to hit and to give another slam on the communist Chinese themselves. Uh, Xi has taken away Deng Xiaoping for he had his failings. He was not a nice guy at Tiananmen Square, but he allowed peasants to run their farms. He allowed businesses, industry to grow things, and he was part of what made the great advance in industry going. Well,
Yeah.
Xi is this cult of personality, kind of like Stalin and things. So it's
Yeah.
when you're doing that, somebody, some business type like Elon Musk would have been out with the Uyghurs working in the Virgin Lands.
Yeah.
So likewise, Jack Ma disappeared for several weeks and came back a very much more modest person.
Yeah.
And his company was going to do a big stock sale that got canceled. Why? Because they didn't want business people having power. So, so what if we lose 20 billion that this business guy might have done? We're going to have purity of the Communist Party of Marxism.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think when it comes back to Kissinger and Nixon, certainly Kissinger, I think he was thinking along the lines of if we can bring the Chinese in and turn them into a capitalist society, that eliminates the whole communist thing. Eventually, the
Mhm.
communism will fall from inside, and that's essentially what kind of happened in Russia. The Russians and Americans were competing in military stuff, and the Russians couldn't keep up. And so, Gorbachev brought
Mhm.
in glasnost and perestroika, and then the hardliners were severely opposed to that, and they tried to have a coup to oust him out, and then
Mhm.
Yeltsin came to power, and the Soviet Union crumbled because, interestingly enough, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but after the Baltic states were annexed by Stalin, um, or conquered, I guess you could say, and then annexed, uh,
Yes,
they
there was a conquest that led to annexation.
yeah
Exactly.
they were given a right that other Soviet socialist republics were not given, and that was the right to secede. And so, of course, when they seceded, then the other republics were like, "Well, we don't need the rest of this monstrosity either," and so
Mhm.
they left. And of course, what we're seeing today with Putin and Ukraine is he wants to rebuild Russia to its former glory
Mhm.
at a time when the Russian ethnic population is declining rapidly.
Mhm.
And with this war, a lot of the able-bodied intelligentsia that is of fighting age has already left the country, and so they're basically emptying their prisons to fight this war. And yeah, I think this
Mhm.
this Ukraine war, well, and we've talked about this several times before, but Ukraine is doing more of a job of destroying Russia as a superpower than the United States ever did, in
Mhm.
terms of wiping out a third of their air force in one operation, their strategic bomber fleet.
Yeah,
Um,
the spider web.
yeah, and they have in recent months they've wiped out about 10% of Russia's oil refining capability. They had actually negotiated some sort of a deal. Russia would stop bombing their cities and they would stop bombing their oil refineries. Well, of course, Russia didn't stop bombing their cities, and so Ukraine said, "Well, we're not going to be part of that anymore." And so
Mhm.
they're going after their refineries again. And I mean, that's the same strategy that the United States used against Germany in World War II. It's like find out the
Mhm.
strategic resources and bomb the crap out of them so that they can't carry on this war. And they almost did that at Schweinfurt with the ball bearing factories, but they certainly were effective at eliminating the oil production
Yeah.
in any place that they could
Although
get.
very painfully, the
Yes.
first attacks on Ploesti in Romania, which was a major exporter of oil at the time, they it wasn't expected that there would be a lot of airplanes, fighters, interceptors, but there
Yeah.
were. So
Yeah.
that was a massacre, the first couple raids. But
Yeah. But
eventually they did hit it.
yeah, and I mean that's an interesting story. I've read the little Malcolm Gladwell book, The Bomber Mafia, which is quite an interesting little read. And of course, I've read a
Mhm.
lot of other World War II books. But the fact that the United States went into the war saying, "Hey, we'll do daylight raids because we can, bomb more accurately during the daylight." The British were just shaking their head. It's like, are you crazy? I
Mhm.
mean, but if you want to do it, you think your boys can handle it. And of course, the Americans did manage to get long range fighter cover
Yeah.
with 51s and P-47s. But
As Hermann Goering said, if if they ever get if the Americans ever could do that crazy thing and have fighters that could get over Berlin, you can call me Mike. And so, and so a year later, they're muttering, Herr Mike, Herr
Mhm.
Mike.
Well, he said something similar during the Battle of Britain. It's like I don't remember what it was, but you can call me Meyer or something like that. Yeah. Uh,
Mhm.
oh, but yeah. Anyways, we really digressed, but I think global geopolitics plays a large part of this story, and
Yeah, I
it,
didn't think of the Russian Ukrainian suspects, but them making Russia less dangerous makes communist China less useful to the United States. So, yeah, that's another thing that could hurt. And of course, it might the loss of the Russian trading ally might hurt China as well.
yeah.
And they also, and a third thing, there's more, but yet there's more population demographic collapse in Russia and China are major issues.
Well,
That could hurt the
China and
economy.
Japan,
And
Japan and South Korea, and I mean, quite frankly, Europe.
oh yeah,
Europe, Canada is basically just barely hanging on. The United States has a basically replacement rate of population growth without immigration. And of
hmm
course, immigrants seem to be persona non grata these days in the US.
well, illegal immigrants. They're
Yeah.
not new neighbors. They're getting thrown out.
Well, I mean, the stories, and I'm sure you're hearing these stories too, but I'm hearing stories about people who've been living in the States for like 20 years on a working visa or whatever. They never became US citizens, but they um, had, what is it, landed immigrant status or something like that? Or
Well, you
what's the,
got green card status.
yeah.
Yeah, you
Anyway, so
can.
they've been working there for like 20 years, and all of a sudden ICE shows up at their door and says, "Hey, you're leaving the country." So that seems like a little bit beyond what the concerns of the rampant immigration during the Biden administration. So
Yeah,
if you're going back 20 years,
considerably so.
yeah.
The before it was, you applied and uh, months later you get to do other paperwork, and then maybe a couple of years you could get over it. And then these people worked and spent waiting in line versus other people that show up. And as one Chicana lady in LA said, we pay $1,000 a month for health insurance. These
Hmm.
people get free health insurance.
Right, right,
We
yeah,
pay $100 a month for a cell phone. These people get an Obama phone.
right.
And sometimes they got free tuition in colleges. So
I'm not saying that what the Biden or Obama administrations were doing in terms of immigration is something that I agree with. And it's the same thing you hear in the UK. It's like, well, we don't have enough place for these refugees to stay, so we're going to put them up in hotels. And New York
mhm.
City being declaring themselves to be a sanctuary city until well, even now. But when Texas started shipping immigrants up to New York, it was like,
And
okay, enough,
Chicago.
enough.
Yeah, my favorite was there's Martha's Vineyard. It's a little touristy island. So it's fancy, rich place. And they were all for we're a sanctuary city. And then suddenly a plane load arrived from Florida
Mhm.
and they had them out within a day.
Yeah.
Like now here's our propaganda and here's reality. There's two separate things. Never the twain shall meet.
Yeah, it's always easy to hold a position if you don't have to deal with it. The
Hmm.
other way is of saying that is what's the saying? It's really hard to see from one perspective if your job depends on you seeing from another perspective, right?
Hmm. Yeah. But meanwhile, back to the electric cars. Maybe we'll get to your favorite suspect. It's amazing we haven't gotten to Donald Trump, who might be the most
I think we've
dangerous
kind of
opponent
touched
of
on him a
electric
little
vehicles.
bit. Well, I mean, you talk about Trump. I mean, drill, baby, drill.
Hmm.
Removing all of the requirements for emissions, gutting the EPA. That goes back to Musk as well. And yeah, so none of it's kind of
Hmm.
ironic, that Musk would be involved with gutting the EPA when he's, running one of the major electric vehicle companies. But he probably had his marching orders, and it's like, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore. And so when you're slashing and burning, stuff gets burned.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
as a
anyway,
practical matter.
yeah. Um, anyway, so yeah, I think Trump is, as far as his ideology, or maybe his supporters' ideology,
Hmm.
he's all for fossil fuels. And in his first
Hmm.
term, he was talking about, clean coal and all that sort of stuff, which is even you don't see American companies going out to build new coal plants, even though if Trump had his way, they probably would. Um, it's just not
Hmm.
uh, long term. It doesn't make any sense in terms of being deregulated. And even if the EPA changes its rules so that you can build it today, that doesn't mean that that's going to stand 8 years from now, sort of thing. So the
Yeah.
writing's on the wall
Whereas
for coal.
a gas plant is so much cheaper, even though coal would eventually be cheaper. But if son of Biden shows up, President Hunter Biden could
Right.
kill
God
off the coal
forbid.
industry again.
Let's hope that they have a real Democratic convention and they get the best person to run next time.
Yeah, right. But anyway, but back at Trump, like as you're referring to in a bit, was uh, Lee Zeldin of their new EPA guy said, "Hey, there was this rule about that the carbon dioxide things could be a problem." It's like, well, maybe we should change that. It's not a pollutant. It's actually a fertilizer, and that is the position on those people. And there's some good arguments for it. When you increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the air, the plants grow better,
Yeah.
which
Oh, yeah.
is not politically appreciated by the left, and so they deny it, which is another reason why people don't trust science. They don't trust journalists nearly as much as they did.
Yeah. You can't pick and choose your science. And there's no doubt that plants,
Yes, we can. Everybody does it.
well, yeah, okay, sorry. If hopefully if you have integrity, you won't do it. But
Nobody
the
does.
the the fact is that carbon dioxide makes plants grow better because it's more bioavailable, and so that's why greenhouses pump carbon dioxide in them to help their plants grow.
Hmm.
And we have seen a lot of greening around the world, like places that hadn't been green, and you can see this from like satellites. NASA reports on it. large parts of China are turning green now. That some of that is because the communist government is promoting the building of or the planting of trees on the border areas so that they can anchor the sand in place and use that area for agriculture as they
Mhm.
build more dams and irrigation projects from the Himalayas heading north.
Mhm.
But yeah, definitely carbon dioxide is a fertilizer, but at the same time, all of the other stuff that they're saying about it being a greenhouse gas is true too. And I know we've had a discussion about that. So the
Mhm.
question is, how far is that true? How much of a difference does it make? And, you know, looking at world history, I mean, at the time of the dinosaurs, temperatures were 6 degrees above what they are now. I mean, true, we didn't have polar
Mhm.
ice caps at the time, but
Yeah.
you know, does that mean that humanity would be wiped out if the temperature increased? And the answer is definitely no. We've got the
Mhm.
technology to handle that. What's more, we can do geoengineering. I mean, if things got really bad, it's very
Mhm.
inexpensive to put sulfur dioxide into the upper atmosphere and produce clouds and reflect more sunlight and all that
Mhm.
sort of stuff. These experiments have been done, and we can do that. It's just a question of who's going to take responsibility if it goes wrong. You can imagine. Oh, we'll bioengineer and we'll drop the global temperatures by 2 degrees by putting sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, and then a major volcanic eruption happens and the temperature drops 4 degrees and crops are failing around the world. And what do
Yeah.
we do now, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it's really complicated, and the question is, how much can we control realistically? Are we going to be good managers of the environment? It's something else. So
Yeah. But meanwhile, the politics of it is that the let's see, my left is your right. Whoops, there we go. I get there I am. It's on the left wing. They're saying uh, we can get rid of fossil fuel cars, internal combustion engines by electric. So they have staked out that position, and they wanted to kill off fossil fuel cars. Well, just like anything Trump's for, Democrats are against. Well, anything Democrats are for, Trump is against. And so they want to, that's another reason to kill the electric car.
yeah.
And
Well,
possibly another reason that uh, maybe Elon Musk thought that maybe he would get a special carve out so he could keep his electric cars going. And then the uh, there were there had been government subsidies in the past for electric cars, including Teslas. Well,
mhm,
they were saying, and another subsidy we'll get rid of is on electric cars.
yeah.
And so it's this Byzantine, I think, is the word that comes to mind, the politics that are involved here.
Well,
So Trump has a reason to kill the electric car, and hey, a more tariffs on BYD, which is the most likely supercar maker in China. That would be one way of doing it. Another one was there was a thing where they had to have a certain level of efficiency on cars, and Obama raised it. Biden was raising it some more, and people were saying, if you raise it anymore, there's just no way we can have an internal combustion engine. And and the left wing said, and your point is,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
that's
But
what we want
but,
to do.
but
No,
let's
if
take
they
a
want
look
to
at
keep the internal combustion engine going, kill off the electric car, and they've got to keep it. And they took off. They still have the rule that cars must get that certain level. However, the Congress is taking off. They zero the penalty. They said if they fail to do it, will you can fine them $0 and 0 cents.
yeah, that sounds
So
like a
the cars are
legislation with teeth
released.
there.
It sounds like what?
A legislation with teeth.
Yeah, or a legislation that's toothless now.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
pull the
Well,
teeth.
I was being facetious.
Mhm.
So let me put another spike in the Trump argument here. Um, so raising tariffs with Canada and Mexico. Now, all of the automakers have had relatively seamless transfer of materials between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. so that engines are being manufactured in Mexico, stuff is being assembled in the States with parts coming in from Canada, and
Mhm. The generator might
sub-assemblies are
be from a
moving
fourth company somewhere, or fourth
exactly.
country.
They're all over the place, but because of the auto pact going back to the 1950s or something like that, um, there was fairly seamless integration. And now with these tariffs that are coming in now, anything that was covered under USMCA is still apparently free trade, but some things apparently weren't ever in the automotive industry weren't put under that
Mhm.
trade agreement. So, now all of a sudden, I don't know, let's say an alternator or something's being built in Canada and is getting shipped to the US. Well, now there's a 25% tariff. So that
Mhm.
affects not only electric vehicles, but that affects all vehicle manufacture. And if you listen to Trump, he's saying, "Well, we want to bring all of this back home. We want to
Mhm.
essentially block out Canada and Mexico from the automotive industry and just do everything here." That, I mean, tariffs have been tried in the past. Part of the reason the Great Depression was the Great Depression was because when the stock market crashed, Herbert Hoover's government said, "Oh, well, we're going to build up our own industries by putting tariffs on international trade." And of course, it had the opposite effect of stimulating the economy. It basically crashed it. And I think we're seeing some of that happening again. Like the global economy has slowed down since Donald Trump has come into office. So is that another thing that's killing the electric car? Is it killing the automotive industry in general? You tell me.
Mhm. In 20 years, it'll be clearer, clearer. Although, depending on their politics, historians will have different blames. Actually, I do have another major suspect, and that would be Joseph Robinette Biden, or rather, the organization that went around him, which we didn't realize that he really was not a functional president.
Right.
So a number uh, of his staff were making a lot of the decisions. There was kind of a committee.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of things sort of fell behind between the cracks. Like they have like $7 billion for thousands of charging stations all along the freeways. And so people in Nebraska could have electric cars. And the numbers that got done were just a few dozen. And this is another thing that people noticed. If you're really going to go places, it was an adventure. It- where is the next working charger? And when you get there, will it be working? Because
Yeah.
then some of the other companies tried to have their electric cars, but they had their own chargers, which was another disaster until Tesla chargers pretty much always worked. And finally, a lot of these companies said, "Hey, we'd like to be in on the Tesla system of chargers," which is
Sure.
another political thing where if you don't like uh, Elon Musk, either as a Republican or as a Democrat, they both dislike him now to
Yeah.
varying degrees. Well, they're going to be mad about that. Maybe they'll cut off the Tesla chargers, and then your electric car in Western Nebraska won't be able to charge
Yeah.
unless you run
Well,
out and buy a $5,000 upgrade to your
so,
electric system.
this is the kind of the way that I heard it. So initially, when Musk is selling the electric cars, one of the big arguments was, well, how useful is it if I can't even ride across the country? So he said, okay, we'll build this whole network across the country,
Mm-hmm.
and so there were a few freeways that had Tesla charging stations,
Mm-hmm.
and then with the adoption of Tesla charging systems by the whole automotive industry, that just kind of made sense because, from a standards perspective,
Mhm.
Betamax VHS thing, it's like,
Mhm.
okay, Tesla's already got a system that works. It's pretty decent. It's better than, the stuff that we're coming up with. Why don't we just adopt it? And I think like Tesla has something on their website. They say all of our patents are free for anyone to use. So with that, that means that the other automotive industry, other automotive companies can use the Tesla charging
Mhm.
system and hook in, and it just makes
Mhm.
sense rather than having 5 different plugs that come in from a charging station if you're stopping
Mhm.
to charge up. So I think Musk was okay with that. That was one case where Tesla cooperated with the Biden administration, and everybody walked away and was satisfied. And
Mhm.
it makes sense. Don't have you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you've got something that's working from an engineering perspective, why replicate it with a different format? Unless you absolutely, uh, you know,
Mhm.
that it becomes a political thing as opposed to an engineering thing in that case, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and so that is a good start on things, but to this point, a lot of we still have a lot of gaps in the charging capacity. And so that's another reason that the electric vehicle industry is sort of a limping caribou. And there's a lot of financial wolves out there.
Yeah,
And so, like, gee, you can't get it charged. And uh, gee, maybe you should sell your car to your used Tesla or your used electric car cheap. Or it'd be better to buy from my uh, internal combustion engine company. And so that gets us to one more suspect. A number of uh, a good number of people in the automobile manufacturing industries, they're not, they were not real thrilled with the electric cars. They're saying, they, they're more expensive to make, and they're losing profits, and some of our workers are getting laid off. Let's just go with what works.
yeah,
So they're not big sport, and that's part of the reason why Trump got more votes, and he might still get a lot more labor votes. And this odd inversion where the Democrat Party was the party of the working man for 100 years, and now the Democrat Party is the party of the intelligentsia, a lot of rich people. And then, of course, the Republicans were always the rich businessmen. But no, there's more rich businessmen in uh, in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley that are Democrats than are
mhm,
Republicans, and
yeah,
people have noticed that.
yeah. It's definitely changed, and like I've seen studies where if you've got a college degree, you're more likely to vote Democrats, and you can see
Mhm.
that in a lot of the red states are more agricultural or uh, working class states,
Mhm.
I guess you could say. But I want to bring this home here. So we're talking about who killed the electric car, and quite frankly, I would say it's nowhere close to being dead. So the United States and other
Mhm.
countries are having issues with it, but in Norway, 92% of vehicles that were sold in 2024 were electric vehicles. In Sweden, 58% were. In China, 48% were. In the UK, 28%. The average around the world is 22%. So basically, a little bit more than one in every 5 vehicles sold around the world last year was an electric
Mhm.
vehicle. The United States, 10%. Germany, almost 20%. And so the electric car is here to stay now. Like the electric car, I think,
Mhm.
would have been the vehicle of choice had Edison had batteries that were comparable to what we have today. And what's
Mhm.
even more interesting, I think, is that battery technology is still continuing to improve. And one of the latest advances that I
Mhm.
heard about was now aluminum. based batteries. So lithium ion, of course, you've
Mhm.
got one electron per lithium atom that you can transfer back and forth. But aluminum, you have three valence
Three? Yeah,
electrons.
I was going to say three. Yeah.
And so even though it's a heavier element, because you have three times as many, it actually becomes, in terms of charge density, better than lithium. And
Mhm.
that is, and the other thing is, lithium is harder to mine and harder to find. Aluminum is all over the place. It's like the fifth most
Yes.
abundant element in the planet or something.
Yeah,
And
it's considerably cheaper. And that was one of the issues of Club of Rome report where they're going to, how we're going to run out of things like aluminum. It'll disappear. And then somebody else said, hey, bauxite isn't the only ore. If the price of
exactly,
aluminum goes up, 15%, we can use alunite, which is much more common than bauxite.
right,
So we're not going to run out of aluminum. It's getting close to iron in amount of it. Iron and aluminum, this planet will never run out of.
right.
So yeah, an aluminum battery would be good. Some other battery, I keep hearing people are trying. And if that somebody stumbles across there, if there's like a speaking of Tesla, if there's a Nikola Tesla that says, I can make a magnesium battery
Right.
that'll go for 30 years and you can charge it in 10 minutes
Yeah.
uh, and it's at one fifth the price. So if it doesn't, if it wears out in only 15 years, slam in a new battery and you're in business.
Exactly.
Then the electric car would win. But key point I was saying, I'm not saying who killed the electric car the second time. It's like who's killing it.
Yeah.
So we'll
Yeah.
see if it survives until that new Nikola Tesla shows up.
Well, it's ironic that Norway is buying 92% of the electric vehicles because, of course, they're one of the major oil and gas producers in Europe.
Mhm.
But you know what they're doing is exactly what I've been saying Canada should be doing. Like Canada uh, has 60% of our electricity is produced by hydro, and
Mhm.
essentially like 80% is non-fossil fuel. So that's nuclear, wind, and solar are also in the mix there.
Mhm.
And so we could easily transition to electric vehicles. And if we start doing a smart grid type of thing, where we're using the batteries in the electric vehicles to level out the peak demand and charging them at night when
Mhm.
there's the gas plants are operating, they have to have base load. So let's just buy our electricity at 2 cents a kilowatt or whatever the going rate would be
Mhm.
at that time. That benefits everyone. But well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. There are a lot of interests that don't want to see that happen,
Mhm.
and like the electric producers themselves are, I think, opposed here in Alberta at least to paying people a fair amount for micro production and stuff. So
Mhm.
in our electric system here in Alberta, you can put solar panels on your roof
Mhm.
and be connected to the grid. So you got the best of both worlds. You can produce your own electricity, and when you're not producing, you can tap it from the grid. The thing is, the electric companies don't want you to put in more capacity than you're actually going to use. So they want to
Mhm.
have it balanced out so that at the end of the year, the electrons you put in balance out with the electrons that you're taking out. So you end up as a net zero. You're sucking
Mhm.
zero energy out of the system in a net way, but they want you connected to the grid because they make a lot of their money on the power lines and the municipality taxes
Mhm.
and all this sort of stuff. So when I look at my electric bill, only 1/3 of it is the electricity I consume. The rest are these other levies and service charges. I expect it's probably similar in California.
Mhm.
And so this is one of the things that I think it's kind of corrupt. So if you really want
Mhm.
to promote clean energy, then the first thing you have to do is make it worthwhile for people to get into the system.
Mhm.
So let's have a smart system where when you're pumping energy into the system and it's peak demand, you're getting paid
Mhm.
better for that than
Mhm.
otherwise. and then
Yeah,
we'll see more production happen. But at
yeah,
this point, vested
that's a
interests.
whole other issue. And I wonder
But it
about that
is
would be a
connected.
whole session that we can do.
It is connected to electric vehicles. So because
Hmm.
electric vehicles with their battery systems designed specifically for charging and discharging and rapid
Hmm.
recharging, they are the ideal way. Like our premier said, you know, she put a moratorium on clean energy production in the province, and apparently she scared away about over $30 billion of investment that was slated for the province. I mean, just a ridiculous amount of stuff because Alberta's got a lot of
Hmm.
solar energy and a lot of wind energy available. Anyway, like I say, the vested interests don't want that because it's like, well, we got our natural gas production, we've got all
Hmm.
this. If we would have to buy extra battery systems to store all of this renewable energy because it's intermittent. Well, if you have a bunch of electric vehicles running around and you're able to get the batteries essentially for free, that gets rid of that argument entirely.
Now, somebody has to pay for the batteries, but
Well,
redox
basically the
batteries
car
are a lot cheaper. They're 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 big and
sorry,
heavy, but they're a lot cheaper than lithium.
let me rephrase that. The car owner is going to purchase the batteries, but they can then turn those batteries into a profit center if it's actually a
Mhm.
smart grid system. So they can get some payback for the investment that they made. And then the
Mhm.
utilities don't have to put the money up front to buy these battery systems. I should have, that's more realistic.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
somebody is paying for it ultimately.
yeah, and well, there would be some things. Your your power grid has to have connections that'll take over the controllers. It's not free, and you got to have a breaker to turn your battery power into AC to go back on the grid.
Sure. Inverters
And
and all that.
people,
Yeah.
it's labor intensive. People are checking that you're you're in phase. You're not. Uh,
Yeah. But for instance, I've got a car. I work from home, so I rarely actually used to need to use my vehicle for business, but I have to pay insurance on it, and it sits out in my front, you know, on our parking pad
mhm.
more than 98% of the time. That would be a perfect system to be connected to the grid if it was electric, and I was
Hmm.
getting some benefit back for it because yeah, it's just you know I'd be able to get some money
Yeah,
back being able to make the difference in buying power low and selling it high. That would
yeah.
be
That's the other thing. If you have some sort of regulatory framework so that the power would be sold to people when they have a huge amount of extra power for whatever reason. It's in the spring and they don't want the dams to overfill, so they would
mhm,
sell power at a very cheap rate. Or again, for solar and wind, if there's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., they have this huge surge in power, which was the opposite of what what the peak load was 30 or 40 years ago. But anyway, if they in that time they would the ideal thing was they would sell it at a low rate and people would do things. Well, the other thing would be uh, the old ice bears. That when they were the world was really worried about energy shortage in the 1970s when the big energy crises hit. They said we can freeze essentially a swimming pool of water all throughout, especially anytime there's extra energy, and then air conditioning will
mhm,
be done. The extra heat given off goes into this frozen swimming pool, and it's like I think 80 calories
yeah,
per
yeah. I mean, I
per
read about that.
centigrade.
Yeah, in Alberta, you, so this is a something that I'd like to develop. Um, I look at my gas electric bill, and for the entire winter, if you add up all of the gigawatts
Mm-hmm.
of equivalent heating that I get from natural gas, it works out to less than if I had a pool of water, like you say, that is uh, 2 meters by 3 meters by 5 meters. So 30 cubic meters of water. Just the energy that you can extract in the difference
Mhm.
between liquid and freezing phase of water is enough to heat. And we got a pretty decent sized home here. It's enough to heat the entire house for the winter. And then, like you say, in the summer, like right now, it's pretty warm in my office because I got the doors closed and I haven't got the window open. But the computer's pumping out the heat. And of course, during these August days, it gets pretty warm. So you could use that, that cold water then as your heat sink, which of course you'd freeze the water and then warm up the temperature. And if you can
Mhm.
get the temperature up to, I don't know, 30, 40 degrees, that just adds to the heat that you can extract from it in the wintertime.
Mhm.
So,
Or you have two pools on different sides of your basement, and one would have hot water, and you
oh,
could
yeah.
suck the heat out of that in
Yeah,
the
no,
winter.
I thought of that as well. Yeah, so having two tanks, one is hot, one is cold. Yeah, absolutely. But by the end of the winter, you'd extract enough heat out of both of them that they'd both be frozen, I think. So
Yeah, again,
in this climate.
doing that. So, yeah, back at the electric vehicles, we have, in conclusion, we've got a number of suspects who might be trying to do in the electric vehicle or might cause it to happen. One being Elon Musk, being an eccentric character. Uh, Two being the Trump administration that are they are supporting internal combustion fossil fuels, and they're angry when people have oversold green energy things. So they're fighting against it.
Mhm.
China, number three, it's their internal problems. They're the too many companies, or the companies having to be weeded out. Everybody was there was a gold rush going, and now a lot of these companies aren't going to make it, and they might suck the other companies down, or worse, they've overproduced and they're selling all over the world. People are accusing them of dumping, which is probably true. It's like we can't sell them. We'll sell them for a discount. Da, 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 da. But the other people don't appreciate that. And then, uh, like I was saying, the Biden administration, the green movement has not always been the most efficient, most organized, and that's left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. So it's an uphill battle getting people's faith in this new technology going. But
Mhm.
it did die once, it could die again, and then they'll say, "Hey, we've got even better technology this time. We got third time's the charm." We'll see. But anyway, that's some of the major things
Well,
that
okay,
could hurt
there's a
it.
couple that you missed there, I think. So anyone in the oil and gas industry, or particularly the oil industry, that doesn't want to see their business drop. So any of the oil
Ah,
companies
that's right. An existing competitor who have a
yeah,
lot of money. I was kind of lumping them in with Trump and company, but that's not true. They're their own beast,
right.
and yeah.
And so then now who are the OPEC countries, obviously, and OPEC plus with Russia. And if you listen to Peter Zayan, Russia doesn't have any vested interest in seeing electric vehicles prosper, since one of their major exports is oil. And
Mhm.
if you listen to Peter Zayan, he makes a pretty
Mhm.
decent case, and I tend to agree with him that you know Trump seems to be influenced by Putin for whatever reason, and his administration is leaning pro-Russia as opposed to, say, pro-Ukraine or pro-Europe and traditional allies.
Mhm.
So, that could be part of the Trump's position against electric vehicles, even though he had that
Mhm.
advertisement for Tesla on his front lawn there. So,
Yeah, so
anyway,
Trump is a
enough
politician, so
conspiracies.
hardly they like the windmill up on your barn, they turn the wind depending on which way the wind is blowing.
Yeah.
And so, uh, yeah, that was good. You mentioned that. Another, just like when the televisions came out, the movie industry talking about how uh, TV sets could give you cancer and all sorts of things. They were,
They probably weren't wrong with all the x-rays that the original ones had.
yeah, those cathode ray tubes. Any stray, really strong electrons
Yeah.
bouncing onto a metal can could produce some sort of particles
Yeah.
and
Children don't
and
sit so close to the
X-rays.
TV. That's why
Hmm.
we had lead glass tubes for those CRTs.
Yeah, that's another a nice. That's maybe an encouraging thing to finish up on because the technology has evolved to where my screen now is about 3/4 of an inch thick, and I don't think it has any any stray electrons,
Yeah.
uh, any any X-rays or anything. It's just a little LED which produces a lot less or uses a lot less electricity, and
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a double wide screen here, and I don't feel like I mean, obviously, you wouldn't feel it if you had X-rays or whatever, but yeah,
mhm.
definitely. I wouldn't feel so so good if I was thinking about the X-rays from a CRT, which is kind of funny because when I was in university, the first time I ever worked with a dual monitor system was a CAD system developed, I think, by Sun Microsystems, and it was about 30-inch TVs that I was working across, and they were, I was sitting like right next to them essentially.
Oh dear.
I was getting irradiated pretty well. You could have taken an X-ray just by putting a scanner behind me or something.
Yeah, kind of like speaking of Edison, when Röntgen first published a couple papers about this new X-rays that he'd found. The Edison's laboratory had all the equipment to make X-ray tubes. They had vacuums and things, and so they're taking pictures of their hand,
Right.
their head, and then somebody said, there's some medical things that can cause that, can have that." And Edison was worried that some of his people did that. Not to mention that they were working with lead and mercury and all sorts of awful things.
It's amazing how much we've learned about human physiology in the last, 150 years, 100 years for sure. Even in the
Yeah.
last 5 years, for goodness sakes. But mercury and I was just reading today about prions and stuff. Mad cow disease and all this sort of stuff. Nobody even had a clue about those sorts of things 100
Hmm.
years ago. So
Yeah. Or
now it's like,
lead and paint.
yeah, or lead and
Electronics,
gasoline.
yeah, that was even worse. But for the two of them, we had the big fires in the LA basin, January 6th and 6, 7, 8, around in there. And uh, afterwards, they're cleaning, there was a lot of lead in the yards,
Mhm.
which the Corps of Engineers did a wonderful job. They were wonderful people. Uh, what would you like? You want to keep this tree? Okay, we'll keep that. You want that one out? Sure, we'll take that one out. And scoop, I guess we need to go about 6 inches down to take it away to put it in. And so they did all those things. But my thought was, well, how much of that came from the fires and how much from a century or more of lead paint
Right.
that was on there? And of course, lead from gas stations, tetraethyl lead that they had.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that stuff that was left over. So again, we've gotten better, and hopefully our electric cars and or in uh, uh, internal combustion engines will
Yeah.
continue getting cleaner.
Oh, I was just watching a video of a guy. He talks about electrical things, and he's talking about PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, and how they were used extensively in the electric industry as coolant fluid for
Mhm.
transformers and such, because it was essentially impossible to get them to ignite and start
Mhm.
burning. Well, by 1977, we knew how toxic they were, and they were made illegal. But I remember when I was in high school, we still had ballasts for lights and stuff. So it's mercury vapor lamp and a ballast full of PCBs.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Hey, what could go wrong with that?
I mean, the toxic stuff that I was exposed to growing up, yeah, I'm glad that my children, don't have to worry about those sorts of things. But I'm
Hmm.
sure there's other toxins out here. And
Yes.
and
Well,
what,
lead mines way back in Roman times and before, they
yeah,
were, and the smelters. Gosh, I was in El Paso at Fort Bliss for
yeah,
6 months after I came back from Vietnam. And there was a big Sarco, I believe it was, smelter that had been there for decades on the Mexican-US border there. And there was big questions of how much, uh, a uh, a few tons per year
yeah,
of tiny particles of various heavy metals, nickel, lead,
yeah,
and such that got spread all over the desert.
yeah. My wife's family on her mother's side grew up in a place called Trail, BC, and they had a smelter there. Her
Mhm.
and So they would. I think they smelted all sorts of things: lead, copper, zinc. And Part of the reason they're located there is because there's a huge hydroelectric dam that they were able to
Mhm.
get free electricity from. Essentially, the company owns it.
Mhm.
Cominco, Tech Cominco, I think is what they're called. But during the Second World War, that place was, producing all sorts of metals for the war effort and stuff. And now we import zinc concentrate from Alaska, I think, and copper concentrate from Chile, and it still gets smelted there. But the thing is, back at the time that Sean's mom was growing up in the area, that the forests around there were all dead because of all the pollution that was coming out of those
Well,
smokestacks. But you
that
go there
should have been a
now,
sign.
yeah, yeah, should have been a sign. You go there now, and you'd never know that it was a toxic waste dump. And I think even to this day, if you measure the lead levels in the streams and stuff, they're still above normal. But
Mhm.
yeah, part of the reason why it was such a popular place for smelting was because there's an ancient volcano there, and they had some good ores originally from there. And that now, of course, they're bringing them in since they have the facility. They bring them
Mhm.
in from all over the world. But things like bismuth get produced as a byproduct of the smelting process of other ores, and so it's pretty interesting to take the tour through there.
Yeah. Let's see. That's also Alberta, or
That's in British Columbia. It's very close to the U.S. border with Washington, I guess.
okay. Yeah, that fits because I think Tacoma had a big smelter thing that they've turned it into a park now.
Mhm.
So it's probably similar sorts of things, probably the same deposit to province, bringing
Yeah,
metals. Again, yeah, huge volcanoes, Mount Rainier, not so far away, and a bunch of other volcanoes
sure.
going down.
Cascadia. Yeah,
Hmm.
but it is interesting. You go through the tour, and then they have like a visitor center, and it's like products that are produced from materials from this, and they have like Pepto Bismol, stuff like
Exactly. I was thinking about that because, yeah, if you get yeah, issues, Pepto-Bismol is great to deal with. If you got some sort of diarrhea, it solidifies,
that. Yeah, it coats your stomach,
precipitates out or something. So,
yeah, antacid and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Anyway,
mhm,
so we've
absolutely.
been chatting for about 90 minutes here, and
I
I think we,
think we've done it. We got to other issues of pollutants and, yeah, long-term dealing with things, but the electric vehicle, uh, the battle is still on, whether
yeah,
it
I
wins or
think
loses.
I don't think the electric vehicle is going to go away, but I also think that we're going to be using um, uh, gas-powered vehicles or fossil fuel-powered vehicles for some time, and that might even take the form of biofuels. Like Brazil has a lot of vehicles now that are running on ethanol produced from corn or from sugar. And of course, we have 10% ethanol in most of our gasoline these days, too.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't see it going away anytime soon. I kind of have an ongoing argument with a friend of mine who's an energy researcher. He thinks that peak oil is going to happen by 2029, 2030. And I'm pretty convinced that it's going to happen sometime afterwards. But it all depends on whose
Mhm.
forecasts you listen to. Of course,
Yeah.
OPEC and some groups are saying 2050 will be peak oil. IEA is saying like 2030. So it depends on, again, your political persuasion, how you view the world and stuff. But I figure with Trump in power, that has put back the adoption of the electric vehicle and peak oil
Mhm.
by at least 4 years. So
I and I would agree with you on some things. I think there will always be a a market for electric vehicles, particularly where you've got an urban area with a mild climate, so you don't get too hot or too cold to give the batteries trouble. If you're not doing mileage, it's a quiet thing. You don't have to worry about as long as it's charged, you're in business. On the other hand, I've as far as running out of fossil fuels, I've seen predictions of peak oil that started in the
70s.
1970s, and there was a peak predictions of oil running out in about 2005. It was going to be running out, and Kenneth DeVries, may he rest in peace, had all the figures there, but doggone reality and Mitchell Energy
Well, shale
changed the
oil,
world. So
yeah.
uh, that's keeping going. And I was just running into more stuff. There might be thousands of years of natural hydrogen,
Oh, yeah.
or for you colorful people, I believe you call it white hydrogen
White
from
hydrogen, yeah.
deposits that nobody even thought of might exist.
Yeah,
So
geologic
we could
hydrogen.
just shift over from hydrocarbons to straight hydrogen.
Well, and we haven't even gotten into tapping the methyl hydrates in the Arctic, and there's lots of oil reserves from that wonderful
Mhm.
Azola event many years ago. And
Oh, yeah. And yeah, methyl hydrates and just straight hydrocarbons under the ocean. In fact, the methyl hydrate is makes a great cap rock. So conceivably, the ocean floor where you've got abyssal plains, those could all be an oil province bigger than the continents. So
so,
the
anyway,
future is
like you say,
a mystery.
I forget who said it, but the Stone Age didn't end because of a lack of stones. So uh, the fossil fuel age won't end because of a lack of fossil fuels. But I think what will happen eventually, if pollution starts getting taxed, and if we do develop technologies like fusion or solar energy, the price of producing solar energy has just dropped precipitously. I remember, back in the 70s, the only people that could afford solar cells was NASA. And now, anyone can put them on their home pretty much. If you can afford a home, you can
Yeah,
afford solar panels.
yeah. Well, there's some issues about that, but definitely it's it's got its marketplace where it's really good, where you're away from things, and especially like a small thing like a traffic signs out in the country. You just have solar panel uh, next to the big sign up above, and a battery box, and at night the Caltrans has a thing. There's an accident ahead. Prepare to prepare to slow down. It's in big lights, and
Mhm.
it's got it all. Or a farm that's up in the mountains, a farmer ranch that are way up there, and every
Yeah,
pole costs $500, and
yeah,
you're 2 miles from the power lines. So yeah, solar panel and a battery pack, that's good.
Yeah. We can end it now, but there's one thing that I wanted to mention. It's kind of off topic, but something that we covered in the past, and that's the solar farm out there on the California-Nevada border there. What's it called again?
Ivanpah, you mean the
Exactly, yeah.
mhm,
So, it's being shut down by the electric power grid because it's too expensive to operate, which I think it's
mhm.
costing about three times as much as most other forms like the PV and stuff. But I
Yeah, the
wouldn't doubt it.
photovoltaics have
Yeah,
gotten so much better that it bypassed the concentrating thermal.
I wouldn't doubt it if a company like Google, which was one of the original investors, Alphabet was one of the investors in it, if they take it over and use that energy for running artificial intelligence or something like that, because that site is already built and the electricity cost isn't as important as actually having the electricity. I've heard that the profit margin, they could pay 10 times as much as what they're paying for electricity to make artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
and it would still be viable. So just like Microsoft has bought up 3 Mile Island interests, I
Yes, so
have
there,
it.
yeah, there were two big thermal plants there, and of course, one of them had the accident and partial meltdown, and but the other one was just fine. It was running until they were competing against subsidized solar and wind. And so they shut it down, and now it's just a matter of finding retired engineers. How did you connect that? How did you connect that?
Yeah.
And putting in new electronics uh, and rewiring things. Wiring is old and whatnot.
Yeah, but I think that's a perfectly viable model since the place is already permitted, it's already built,
Mhm.
and they would just then be using that for their own internal electric production. So it wouldn't even
Mhm.
need to be sold to the grid or anything like that. And then of course, they could have peaker natural gas or whatever they need to make it run 24
Mhm.
hours a day.
Yeah.
Again, since the place is permitted to make electricity and they've already got natural gas there to begin with, it should be no problem for them to
Mhm.
use that to produce electricity for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that's an ongoing thing. I went to a couple of the Reuters small modular reactor conferences, and one of their big things is, okay, our market target is coal-fired plants. That's, as you were mentioning, they're already permitted. They have power lines. They might even still have their transformers there. They've got a big concrete pads everywhere, roads that go in, fences around. They got everything they need. So small modular reactors, and then as other subversive voices would say, or natural gas.
Yeah,
Natural gas
exactly.
is
Well,
cheap to build.
all of Alberta's coal-fired plants have now transitioned to natural gas. So they
Mhm.
basically have the same turbines. They're still using the same heat exchangers and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
instead of having your big, coal drag lines
Mhm.
and processing, you're just pumping natural gas in there. And Alberta natural gas is among the cheapest in the world. That's why we're trying to export so much of it.
Mhm.
Uh, you know,
Yeah.
we I think we
Mhm.
get paid something like uh, you can see the market anyways. It's been as low as like 2.5 cents per cubic meter or whatever they measure it in standard cubic
Mhm.
foot. And um, whereas in Japan, I think they're
Mhm.
paying something like 15 cents for it or for the same amount. So yeah, Australia's
Yeah.
been able to sell their natural gas at a huge profit. The Middle East has finally wisened up, and they're instead of flaring it, they're starting to sell it as well. And
Mhm.
of course, Germany was getting theirs from Russia, but they're looking for alternate sources too. So,
Yeah. Not to mention get blown up by little drones.
well, or those somebody blew up those lines. There's, as Putin said when he was asked who blew up those gas lines to Germany, he said, "You did."
Yeah, it was an American reporter.
So anyway, it's been a
It were
pleasure as
It
always.
was Ukrainians, but where did they get the explosives and a little bit of instruction?
Yeah, I mean, Biden made an unveiled threat to Putin. He said, "You start war in Ukraine, and you're going to lose your gas pipelines." You can look it up on YouTube. It's
Yeah,
pretty
reference.
clear.
Like, yes, there's a good chance he did it, but no, he shouldn't have said
Yeah,
that.
exactly. You want plausible deniability, Mr. Biden. But
Hmm.
I mean, of course, they can blame it. They're in the midst of a war. They can blame it on the Ukrainians, and
Hmm.
it only makes Ukraine look good if they say that they did it, right? Not
Yeah,
that
damn right we did that, and do it
they
again
they've
if we
never
need to.
claimed responsibility. Nobody has, of course, because of course that would make you liable for it. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. Anyway, but we'll have our some electric vehicles. There might be a whole bunch, or most of them might get killed off. We shall see what happens. Stay tuned for further bulletins, and see. I think am I good for one more Sunday, and then I'll be visiting up north.
Yeah, so next week I'll be at the conference, so I'm not sure if I'll make it back in
Oh,
time
that's
for
right.
a meeting.
Okay, yeah, I'll check in with you, or check in with me for I guess it'll be about 2 weeks and such. And I still have to release a couple of those that I haven't. I haven't just have to uh, put the little 2 or 3 paragraph thing and do them for floods and 2 chapters on drones. Speaking of which,
Right.
and in passing, the drone world keeps going on.
Exactly.
There's more things.
Every week I see some new amazing drone that's being developed. So
Yeah,
anyway,
but
it's been a
that's another
pleasure.
topic. Yeah, likewise. So probably we'll talk in between, but it'll might be like next about pushing a month before we get back together.
Yeah. And
But
for our
whatever,
viewers,
it'll be good.
if you like what you're seeing, subscribe and we'll try to make as many of these as we can for you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Good finish up. Talking about marketing,
Well,
EV,
I do
EVs
watch
and
other
podcasts.
I do watch other podcasts, so that's often what they say. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to develop a bit of a following. And who was it? My friend at Energy Media, he said, yeah, after 17 years, we've just broken 300,000 viewers or something like that. So
All right. They might get paid a bunch for that. All right.
exactly.
So yeah, tell your people in your the audience in your panels like, hey, we've got a podcast. I've got I think 18 of them are published now, and we'll have I think 21 when I get tonight and the others.
Awesome.
So,
All right, Roger, have a good week. If maybe 2 weeks if we don't get together next weekend. And always a pleasure. Bye bye.
yeah, likewise. Good night. Good luck on the at your conference.
Thank you. Bye.
Mhm.